Welcome to Proview Rundown, Battle of the Brave Preview, brought to you by Pettis Collision and Legacy Boxing Promotions. I'm Ed Nunez. Joining with me is Austin Colleen, the writer of Colleen's Corner. And Austin, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, Ed.
You know, I think one of the things we're going to talk about first, Austin, is October 28th, in which you asked me to be the master of ceremonies. What an honor it was for me. You had 5 or 6 members go into the New Mexico Boxing Hall of Fame: Mike Adams, Poison Anaya, Sergio Chavez, Luis Chavez, Earl Large, and Chris Linson. And you know, again, what a great evening it was. I was so honored to be a part of that. We also interviewed Fidel Maldonado Sr. and Fidel Maldonado Jr. on stage, and I thought that was a very entertaining and enlightening interview, if you will. But Austin, you want to talk about a little bit about the New Mexico Boxing Hall of Fame on October 28th and just the Boxing Hall of Fame in general?
Well, the Boxing Hall of Fame was started in 2009 by Jerry Martinez. Jerry's a retired pro. He's a graduate. He's a Lobo. And Jerry got sick in 2013, and Juan Nunes stepped in, took over the show, and carried it from that point on. And I was fortunate enough this year, they elected me as the new president, so I was honored. And what I think is great about the Hall of Fame, it recognizes our history. So the inductees last Saturday night, or I should say 2 weeks ago, you really honored some fighters who represented New Mexico boxing extremely well. And
then you also had Mike Adams, the host of On the Mic with Mike Adams, 610. I'm the co-host, and Mike Adams went in as a ring announcer. Poison Anaya went in as a boxer. Sergio Chavez, cutman. And Sergio Chavez has worked with some of the best in the business. Luis Chavez, Earl Large, and Chris Linson. Very touched by Chris Linson's speech when he mentioned that he fought Donald Curry. Donald Curry back in the day, Bruce Curry, those were some very good fighters. And you know, the other thing that I was touched about is Chris Linson traveled well. He had about 9 tables, I think you said?
Oh, he had tremendous sales. We loved him. We want to bring him back next year under a different name.
Chris Linson Day in Santa Fe, October 28th.
Right.
So when he was introduced, he probably had the biggest ovation of the night.
Well, everybody that paid for their tickets for him, they wanted to clap.
Well, they got the opportunity to do that. And I think some of the stories, and again, let everybody know, Austin, the Killian's Corner, where they can go to see your articles, because you have fabulous articles about the Boxing Hall of Fame, and they're running the pictures now as we speak. But you write fantastic boxing articles about, you were at a card at Hobbs last Saturday, you were at the Civic Plaza when I was the ring announcer about a month and a half ago. Boxing's in your blood. You know, you and I on the way over here, you're from Boston, you still got that Eastern accent, man, and that little gruff voice, and we explained that, you explained that to me too.
Right.
But boxing is so much in your blood, and you love it. Let everybody know where to go for Killian's Corner.
Colleen's Corner.
Colleen's Corner, sorry about that.
That's all right. Call me by any name. Colleen's Corner is, just type in colleenscorner.com and I'll pop up. And I can't even remember my latest. Oh, my latest story was on the fight card last Saturday night at Hobbs, New Mexico. The main event had a fighter named All Day. He looks like a real prospect. He's 6-0 with 6 knockouts, but he's a beautiful boxer. He's not a brawler. So he was the main event. And Gene Perez from Berlin, New Mexico, he's really tough. His record doesn't indicate how tough he is. And he was in the fight of the night against one of Louis Burke's fighters.
Out of Las Cruces.
Well, the fighter
Louis Burke, I'm talking about. Now, Louis Burke's also a member of the New Mexico Boxing Hall of Fame,
right,
along with his brother.
Rocky.
Both of them?
Both of them.
Okay.
And
tell us a little bit about that card that you went down, and again, you drove down with referee David Rios, and you went down there last Saturday.
Yeah, we went down on Saturday, but we stayed overnight. It's a 10-hour round trip, so doing that in one day would be ridiculous. And we had a great time. David snores a little, but I don't want to say that in the air.
David Rios, again, the people that don't know him, he's, you mentioned to me on the way over here, interning as a boxing official. I think the world of David. I worked two fight when I was a ring announcer, 2 fight cards, and I really think the world of him. You can just tell. I'll just watch him. I don't know about boxing referees, but watching him, he's very intent. Applies the rules, it seems, evenly. He's still learning, but he seems like a guy that really you want in there.
Well, he had a tough one Saturday night. The 2 fighters put on a brawl, and I was shocked it went the distance because they were hitting each other. Defense wasn't part of the fight, but they both lost their mouthpieces 3 times. So
oh man!
Yeah,
yeah. That sounds like they're just.
They were getting hit, and the mouthpieces were flying in the air.
So they're just coming forward. Hardly know you mentioned.
No, it's just unbelievable. So he had to deduct a point after the 3rd time. They start taking points away. He did it to one fighter, and he hated to do that because now he becomes part of the story, and referees don't want to do that. Then the next round, the other fighter lost his mouthpiece for the 3rd time. But the fans loved the fight. And
he had a good turnout there at Hobbs?
Yes.
As far as fans?
Yeah, he was in the black. Isidro Castillo. Well, we have 3 promoters. And Isidro Castillo promotes down in Hobbs, New Mexico. So the southeastern part of the state, boxing is very much alive. And he brings fighters over from Texas. So in the ring during intermission, I awarded him a Hall of Fame shirt and a commemorative coin, because if it wasn't for Isidro Castillo, there would be no boxing in Hobbs. And his son is undefeated. His son is 6-0, but he broke his knee, I think it was. He hit a table or something, but he was supposed to be on the card and he couldn't fight. So Isidro Castillo is an excellent promoter.
So really, Austin, you get a chance to see a lot of promoters from different parts of the state. I mean, a lot of people, I don't know the name Isidro Castillo, but if he's promoting fights down there in Hobbs and he's getting that kind of, you said he made some money out there, and that's pretty good. So it sounds like you had a very good time, and again, boxing is in your blood. We mentioned that you started out boxing as a youth,
Right.
And you've been in the game for how long?
Well, I saw my first fight, and I was 8 years old. I just turned 8. Joe Louis defended his title against Cesar Charles, and he was expected. People, Joe Louis was unbeatable, but he wasn't that night. He had a good 4 rounds, busted Charles up, and in the 5th round, Charles just took over. But here I am, my little 8-year-old body, and I loved it, what I saw. My living room was filled with all my uncles and older cousins, and my mother was furious that my father let me up on a school night because it was a Wednesday night fight.
Very interesting. We're up against our first break. We'll be back to Proview Rundown, Battle of the Brave preview after these messages.
Hoops NM Basketball Center is coming soon. 10 full courts broken into 2 wings for ultimate basketball and volleyball play. Locker rooms, a lounge area, a pro shop, and a full snack bar will all be a part of a great experience. Convenient parking and access will make the Hoops NM Basketball Center a premier facility for league play and competitive regional tournaments. With over 9,000 square feet, Hoops NM Basketball Center will take court sports play to another level in our community. Courts are regulation high school size with wood floors and seating for approximately 350 per court. Major sponsors and supporters are being assembled now. If you're interested, contact Dan Serrano at 505-249-7994. Send him an email, hoopsnm@aol.com. That's hoopsnm@aol.com. Hoops NM Basketball Center, a premier sports facility serving our community.
Folks, there's no other way but to be all in. Either he's Lord of all or he is not Lord at all. And you can experience the real and authentic, true life change that only God can provide to humanity. See, when we truly encounter Jesus and purpose to know him and follow his teachings, #life change will occur.
Welcome back to Proview Rundown, Battle of the Brave preview, brought to you by Perez Collision, also Legacy Boxing Promotions, Ed Nunez, along with Austin Colleen. And Austin, first segment, we went over the New Mexico Boxing Hall of Fame. This Saturday, November 11th, an event that you and I will be together on. First bell at 6 p.m., doors open at 5 at the Lujan Center. It's the Battle of the Brave. And, local boxing card. You were on the broadcast with Adam Deal a couple of months ago when they did the last fights at the Lujan building at the fairgrounds. And describe that. We're going to go into the fight card. We'll go into the first 4 fights in this segment, then we'll hit the last 4 on the last segment. But you were there for the fights at the Lujan building the last time. What did you think of that as an environment?
Well, it was very good. It holds about 2,500 people. And they had a little bit of controversy. Ronnie Baca, a welterweight from Albuquerque, fought a fighter whose name I can't even remember now, but he was from Mexico. And he apparently had quite a few more fights than they realized when he came into the arena. And they fought to a 4-round draw. It was pretty exciting fight, fought at a high level. But Ronnie, and I believe he's fighting on this card, he's very tall, but surprisingly a good infighter. Tall fighters like space.
Mm-hmm.
But he's very...
extend those arms.
Right, and he has a tremendous reach, but he's very comfortable fighting in close.
Working from the bottom up, that's what we're going to do, Austin.
Okay.
Augustine Perez, 1-0. Roswell, New Mexico, will face Otto Sandoval, 0-3-0 from Santa Fe, New Mexico. What do you know about each fighter?
Well, I know Perez is the brother of Aaron and Jordan Perez from Perez Collision. And his pro debut, he fought a tough serviceman from Hobbs, New Mexico. And I felt, and I wrote up my story, I felt bad for the serviceman because he was talented and he would have won 9 out of 10 times in his debut. But Perez was just unbelievable. He was on him like glue and put on a tremendous show. And I'm guessing Perez is in his early 30s. But he just, like Henry Armstrong, he just never stopped punching. And it was a terrific fight.
Otto Sandoval, you have any information?
Nothing about
No information on him, but Augustine Perez is a come-forward fighter.
Oh, he's on you like a rash.
And the weights of these fighters, Austin?
He fights around 130.
130?
And he's very talented. And he trains hard. He trains with Lupe Perez. Lupe, the trainer, will be here as well. The problem they have down in Roswell, it's just funny. You have this city in the middle of a desert. You get on the border, there's nothing near it. So it's hard to get fighters in there to train and get sparring partners because they're so isolated. It's 3 hours from Albuquerque, and it's 2 hours from Hobbs. So if you're
kind
trying
of like in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah,
sort of, as far as boxing training.
Right, and if you want to bring in fighters to spar your fighters, you're asking someone to make a 6-hour round trip from Albuquerque.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Jordan Garcia, 1-0 from 1-0 from Albuquerque, will face Katie Ramirez, 0-1-1 from Bosque Farms.
I've seen Katie fight, and she's really tough, but I didn't think she was anywhere near the size.
4 rounds fights, by the way, Austin. I didn't mean to interrupt. These fights are scheduled for 4 rounds. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But I don't think that Katie is the same. But apparently they're booking her in, so they must be this. But I saw Jordan's pro debut, and she did a nice job. She was very relaxed. That's all you can ask of a debuting fighter. You can't compare him against a main event fighter. But debut fighters tend to be very nervous. It's understandable.
Excitable? I would think they'd be kind of excitable. Maybe
bell rings and they forget
techniques and
everything.
Fundamentals and start
2 windmills.
Right.
But she wasn't like that in her debut. She was very relaxed. First couple of rounds were kind of close. Her opponent was game. But as the fight wore on, she just picked up and used more and more of her skills.
And they fight at 130 as well, Austin? What weight do they fight at, Jordan?
I believe they were up around 150.
So both about 150 then.
Yeah, they were.
The pace for a 4-round fight as opposed to a 10 or 12 round, a little bit different.
Well, with a lot of your amateur fighters, including Olympians who are very successful, can't make the transition to the pros because in the amateurs, you just fight all out for 3 rounds. There's no feeling out. And in the pros, you have a little more time to work, especially once you get to a 6-rounder. And a lot of your Olympians can't do that. It's ingrained in their mind from 300 amateur fights to just fight from the opening bell. And it just doesn't work for them. The human body, you can bang a heavy bag anaerobically for 30 seconds. After that, you got to get some oxygen.
Right.
And so these Olympians will fight at a ridiculous pace, and by the 4th or 5th round, they've been exhausted.
Let's move along. Then Matthew Escobel, 9-0-0 with 4 KOs, will face Christopher Russell, 3-20-1 with 2 KOs, and he's from Shattuck, Oklahoma. I'm guessing Matthew Escobel's from here.
Right.
So what do you know about Matthew Escobel?
I've seen Matthew fight a couple of years ago at the PAL gym on Wyoming, and he hadn't fought in 4 or 5 years. He's undefeated, and that night he looked rusty. He hadn't fought in a long time, and he looked good. He fought a tough kid, and he was able to beat him. Then he didn't fight again for a few more years, so he's been in a lot of inactivity in his career. And I've seen his opponent fight. He fought.
Talking about Christopher Russell.
Right.
He's been in some fights, but 3-20-1 doesn't give you, you would think that Matthew Escobel 9-0 wouldn't have too much problems with that, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, it's a good fight for him because, he hasn't been in the ring but once probably in about 5 or 6 years. So he's got a lot of ring rust.
Let's get one more fight or 2 more fights in this segment. Christian Cabral, 7-1-1 with 4 KOs, will face Tavorius Teague, 3-17-2 with 2 KOs. Bakersfield, California. What do you know?
The Bakersfield fighter has a phenomenal build. If fights were won on who looked tougher, he'd be undefeated. But he just seems to be too defensive. He doesn't throw enough. Christian Cabral is really classy. I equate him to hearing music when he fights. It's almost like he's doing a Latin dance. He's got a lot of class to him when he's moving around the ring. He's very gifted. And the big thing that's going for Christian, earlier in his career, I thought he wasted a lot of his talent. But he became a father. The mother of his child has been great. She's really grounded him. And when people see Christian now, they'll see a totally different fighter. Last week I was in the gym and he was sparring with a fighter from El Paso, Texas, who was supposed to be in the card. And they really went at it for 6 hard rounds. It was tough for both fighters because they both have a lot of skill. And I just expect big things from Christian. I would expect him to win the fight.
Fighting a veteran there, you mentioned Tavorius Teague has quite a build, you said.
Oh.
So you never know if he puts it together. You never know.
I don't know. I've seen him fight several times. He puzzles me. I've never had a chance to sit down and talk with him. But
because if he's built like that, you kind of wonder with the record he has, how come he hasn't eked out a few more victories?
And, well, Christian's got Christian looks good too. But Christian's more of a boxer. He has a lot of his wins, but they're more TKOs.
We're up against our second break. We'll be back to Proview Rundown, Battle of the Brave preview, brought to you by Pettis Collision and Legacy Boxing Promotions after these messages.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walking to the cashier, order up a root beer and a #1. Cover it with green stuff, 1 scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Rundown, Battle of the Brave, brought to you by Pettis Collision. Also, Legacy Promotions, Ed Nunez, along with Austin Colleen. And Austin, let's get to these fights. And we mentioned Tavoris Teague. And gosh, you know, the way you're talking about these fights, I'm going to be working with you Saturday night. Boy, I really am, because you know more about the fight game than just about anybody I know. And I won't say that you know, Mike Adams knows a lot, but you've been around the fight game a long, long time. So let's go to the 5th bout of the evening. Ronnie Baca, 1-0-1 with 1 KO, will face Anthony Hill, who's 1-23 of Fort Worth, Texas. Before we say this, real quick, people might think, hey, man, they got guys that are 1-23 and 3-20, but you just mentioned Tavoris Teague at 3-17 and 2 is still a dangerous guy, because, you know, they're still dangerous. So you might want to just tell people that, because they hear these records and they're probably thinking these guys can't fight, and they can.
People use the expressions tomato cans or bums. Those people should get into the ring and fight those tomato cans.
Yeah.
When I was fighting, there was a fighter named Jose Pagan Rivera, and if you look him up, he lost like 76 pro fights. So I'd be sitting in the audience, and oh boy, I'd love to get that guy in the ring. Well, I got my wish. I went into the gym, and they said, you're sparring with Pagan Rivera. So I got in there. I couldn't hit him with a handful of rice. He had fought all these world champions. So he looked at me, how did I scare him? He had fought Eddie Gregory, who changed his name.
Right.
You know, and he
had the experience.
Had the experience.
So anyway, going back to that fight, what do you think about Ronnie Baca and Anthony Hill?
I'm very impressed. Anthony Hill is a very interesting character. He's gone the distance with Shorty Salinas and Brian Mendoza, 2 killers, and they couldn't do anything with him. Now, what impressed me, and I can talk more about it later, but fighters who try to knock this guy out, they look like fools. Now, I think Ronnie Baca is a pretty sharp fighter, but if he gets frustrated trying to knock Anthony Hill out, he could look foolish.
And you're saying this too, again, Ronnie Baca just with 2 professional fights.
Right.
One was a draw. Anthony Hill, even though he's 1-23, has 24 professional fights.
Right.
So if you go in there thinking, oh, I'm going to read this record, I'm going to go in there and just, you know, snap his head and we'll be easy.
And you look at it, and he doesn't get knocked out, and he's fighting tough opponents.
So you better be careful.
Well, Brian Mendoza and
Ronnie Baca, if you're Ronnie
Salinas,
Baca, you better be careful.
But Baca's a very hot prospect. He's trained by Sergio Chavez.
We just mentioned him, the Boxing Hall of Famer. Let's move on. 6th bout of the evening. Christian Castillo, 1-0-0 with 1 KO, will face Timothy Ruiz, 1-0-0, 1 KO from Hereford, New Mexico. And I got to tell you this, I've lived here all my life in New Mexico. I'd never heard of Hereford. I don't know where that's at. But what do you know about that fight?
I might have made a typing error. I think it's in Texas. I think.
Okay, he's not from New Mexico then.
I think he's from Texas.
That's okay. That's okay. What do you know about these 2 fighters?
I've seen them both fight. They both can hit. The fighter from Texas got rocked in the first round down in Roswell, and he brought his defense up, just tried to weather the storm. His head cleared. Then he nailed his opponent, but unlike his opponent who went headhunting, he went to the body. The bell rang, they came back out for the 2nd round, and he finished the guy off. But he had a tough fight against a live opponent.
Christian Castillo?
His opponent.
Ruiz. Timothy Ruiz.
And then I love his opponent. Christian, I saw a spar the night that Christian, now I'm forgetting my names here, Christian Cabral sparred. I won't say who, but I don't want to embarrass anyone, but he fought a much bigger fighter, and he just broke him down. For a guy who had a very limited amateur career and only the 1 pro fight, he's a smooth character. He can bang. He's a 140-pounder.
We got a couple minutes left, and these next 3 fights, I definitely want to leave a little bit of time for this. And the 7th bout of the evening, this is a much anticipated fight. Matthew Diamond Boy Griego, 10-0-0 with 6 KOs, will face Alejandro Moreno, 24-37-3, 11 KOs from Juarez, Mexico. Now, this is a fight we talked about. You talked about this. Diamond Boy's got his hands full. Tell us why.
Well, Augustin Benitez is one of the hottest fighters in the state. He fought Moreno twice and couldn't do anything with him. You can't hit this guy. He's like a smaller version of Anthony Hill. It's like trying to hit a shadow. And Diamond Boy, so far, and I've seen most of his fights, comes in, bangs you, and you fall over. He's going to have a hard time even hitting this guy. So this is a real step up in class for Diamond Boy. He's going to need a good left jab, something that he hasn't used much. Not that he doesn't know how to, but he hasn't used it much so far in his career.
He's going to reach for some different tools. He's going to need to.
He can't just go in there throwing left hooks, because there's going to be nothing in front of him.
Much anticipated fight there. Much anticipated. We'll get to some more of these later in the semifinal. Brian Mendoza, 15-0-0, 10 KOs of Albuquerque, will face John David Charles, 9-12-0 with 1 KO from Corpus Christi, Texas. What do you got?
Well, I've seen both fighters. Charles, he's solid. He has, he knows the fundamentals. Unfortunately, Brian Mendoza also does. And Brian is a beautiful boxer, puncher. He is that devastating power. When he won the Golden Gloves, I couldn't believe he hit his opponent in the solar plexus. He went down, he was wide awake, but he couldn't move his arms and legs.
You told me about that fight, and sometimes people forget the body punches are worse than the head punches. They really are. Let's go to the main event. I don't want to have to move you along, and we'll go back to this in a minute. Jason Sanchez was to fight Ray Jimenez. Ray Jimenez dropped out. Then Rasis Alim dropped out. He was 10-0. They finally settled on Ray Garcia. But I talked to promoter Jordan Pettis this morning. They did try to get some other fighters. It just didn't work out. It just didn't work out. So tell us about Jason Sanchez against Ray Garcia. Main event.
Garcia just came into the picture today, because last night he had another opponent who was of high quality. Jason is 10-0 with 6 knockouts. He's had some decent opposition. He carries his punch into the late rounds. You'll find overwhelmingly sluggers, they'll have these incredible knockout records, but all their knockouts come in the first 3 or 4 rounds. Now, I saw Jason against Johnny Gillespie, who was a very good pro, and he knocked him out in the 6th round with a body shot. So Sanchez carries his punch into the late rounds, and he's tough.
And again, with a late opponent, we really don't know much about Ray Garcia, so we'll have to see. 1 minute left, Austin. I want to ask you this. What fight of this card here are you looking forward to the most?
The fight I like is Diamond Boy against Moreno. He's going to, Matthew's going to have to really show some maturity. If he tries to just walk across the ring like a hurricane, he's going to be hitting a lot of air. He's going to have to sit down his punches, try to establish a left jab, try to break the fighter down, take it. And by the way, Moreno, not a murderous puncher, but he has a punch.
So Diamond Boy's going to have a lot of growing up to do that night. November 11th, first bell, 5 o'clock, Lujan Center at the New Mexico State Fairgrounds, 300 San Pedro Drive, Northeast. First bell, 6 p.m. We're looking forward to it, Austin. I think we're going to have a great time.
I think we are too. It's
live on Comcast Channel 26. For producer Josh Brown, my partner Austin Colleen, Ahmed Nunez. You've been watching Proview Rundown, Battle of the Brave Preview, brought to you by Pettis Collision and Legacy Boxing Promotions.